So I asked some questions at the bottom. I'm not going to have you do those now, but I do want you to be asking yourself, are there some roles that you can take a break from? Are there some things, for example, one of the things that I did was I was a member of the Des Moines AM Rotary for 25 years. I really enjoyed it for about 15 years. And I had owned an advertising agency that was in another time in my life, and it was a good organization, good networking group. I really got a lot out of it. What happened over time was that I stayed in the group because once you belong to something for a really long time, you kind of feel like you're in this groove, right? You're like, well, every Friday I go to Des Moines AM Rotary, and I've always been a Rotarian. I've been a Rotarian since the 90s, blah, blah, blah. But what happened was I didn't want to go anymore. My career had changed. I wasn't getting as much out of it. I was older. Now I was, instead of being one of the youngest members of the group, I was one of the oldest members in the group, and I didn't get any joy out of it, but I kept doing it because that's what we do. And you don't think about it. You say yes to certain invitations because you always go to that event, or you always do something. And what was happening was, little by little, predictably, because this will happen in your own life if you're honest with yourself, you might be showing up for the meetings, but you're not really there. And so I would always, this got to a point where I would always come in late, sit in the back, and leave early. What the hell? It cost Rotary at the time that I left it was $1,200 a year in dues. That's a lot of money to spend to sit in the back of the room and not get much out of something, right? So I had to come to Jesus with myself. And I said, you know what? I need to make a decision. And my decision needs to be, I'm at a fork in the road, which is what I call my practice. I either need to get in or I need to get out. I need to start coming back to these meetings and be here on time and stay till the end and talk to people and volunteer for committees and do the things that make me a good member, or I need to resign. And I ultimately decided it was time to resign. Well, what happened was that the members of the group, because I had been a member for 25 years, said, you know, we have this special membership classification. It's called inactive. Instead of paying $1,200 a year, you can pay $400, and we'll keep you on the roster, and we'll keep you on the thing, and we'll let you, still be a part of the group. Does that sound attractive to you? And at first I was like, oh, cool, this is, yeah, awesome, yeah. And then I get to say I'm still in Rotary, but I don't have to do a damn thing. And then I thought, if you think back to the diving board story, there's no halfway in that. There's no half a dive off a diving board. And I ultimately declined the invitation to be a kind of an inactive member because it didn't feel authentic. It wasn't aligned with the person that I am. When you make decisions like that, all of a sudden I found myself not dreading Friday mornings. Those meetings were every Friday morning. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. Thursday nights, I'd stay up late because I didn't want to go to bed, because I didn't want to go to Rotary, and I didn't realize the toll it was taking on me until I was out of it, until I started going to bed on Thursday nights and being like, wow, this feels really good. I can get up and do something else. I could have breakfast with a friend. I could go to a yoga class. I could sleep in. Heck, I don't have to figure out what I'm going to do. I don't have to be someplace tomorrow morning. So part of the reason why I want you to take a stock in your roles is to take a look at that. Are there things that you're doing out of routine that because you've always done them? And the other thing that I say is, it's kind of, I did a talk one time I said the title of it was Green Bean Casserole is the Root of All Your Problems. and it's not because of the bad soup and the crunched up potato chips that goes on the top, although, we could argue that that's not exactly good for you. But it's because many times we go to a potluck, for example, and you bring the same thing and you make the same thing. And even if you've adopted a healthy lifestyle, everybody thinks you're going to bring the green bean casserole, so you kind of are obligated to it, even though you're really over green bean casserole and you really have other things you'd rather be doing. So take stock of the things in your life. The other questions, are there any things that you can share with others? Can you job share? Can you assign duties to a spouse, a partner, a friend? How well are you doing at your various roles? That's a sign. If you're not there 100%, if you're going to your job and looking at your watch and figuring out when's the next time you can sneak into the supply closet and take a little snooze, Maybe rather than doing that, it's time to really reevaluate what you're doing and what it takes. And part of the reason why I keep mentioning courage is it takes courage to make that step, to allow that thing to come into your mind. And here's how change happens. Change happens on a continuum for almost everything that we do, whether it's quitting smoking or leaving a toxic work environment or moving to another house. And the first thing that happens that I find in all situations is you have a little thought in your head. It comes into your mind, it sneaks in slowly, it's a little tap on the shoulder that says, maybe you drink too much. Just saying, maybe you're drinking too much. And you're like, yeah, whatever. And then a little bit of time will go by and you find the courage within you to say to a friend, probably just one, and a real trusted one, and one that you know is going to accept you. I've been thinking, I wonder if I may be drinking too much. And your friend will say whatever your friend says. And then as you pick up steam, you might say it to more people. And then if drinking is something that you need to do something about, you'll finally have the courage to make your move. Or you step back and you decide to stay in the status quo. But so I'm telling you this because if there's a little niggling thing in your mind, a little something that's just passed by that you're like, oh, that's crazy. That's a crazy idea. It's not a crazy idea. It's something inside of you that's begging for attention. Many times those things have to do with our health and our best practices. And our health has everything in the world to do, obviously, with food and moving our bodies and exercise and drinking enough water. But it also has to do with the quality of our relationships and how good of a job we think we are doing when we're doing our vocation or our career. Or what are we kind of half-assed showing up for, like I was half-assing it at Rotary. For 10 years, you guys, I'm not proud of that. But for 10 years, it slowly got worse and worse and worse. It's that when they're like, would anybody here like to volunteer for? And I'm like, don't make eye contact. They'll think you're volunteering. I should have left. Do the math. $1,200 times 10 years? Wow. What kind of home improvements is that? And even more than that, not just the money, what kind of toll did it take here? Knowing that I was half-assing it, knowing that I was going and just kind of showing up, and that people that were there, some of them remembered when I was a good member, some of them knew me from outside or saw me do other things, and I wondered what kind of evaluation they made of me. How did they judge me? What did they think of me? So those are the kinds of things, for whatever reason, that I use as my gauge now, and the thing that helps me decide and determine what kinds of changes I'm going to make in my life. I want to make mention of the video that I gave each of you tonight, too, because this also plays into to courage a little bit. I've had 4 careers. I'm first generation college. Nobody in my family had ever been to anything other than high school, and not everybody graduated from high school. So it was kind of a big deal for me to go to college. And I went immediately after undergraduate and got a master's degree. And when I did that, I went to the University of Vermont for my master's degree. So I'm an East Coast girl. And I moved out here. I took a job at Drake University. And I'm like, where is Des Moines? Is that the capital? That's the capital, right? We learned that in 8th grade. It's the capital. I came out here and I was like, this was in 1980, and I thought, I'm not going to be out here that long. But something happened, obviously. And the thing that happened is that I fell in love with Iowa, and I fell in love with Iowans and the opportunities here. And the weather, I could leave, but I came from Vermont and upstate New York, so I can't really say that it was that great. But anyway, and I loved what I did until I didn't. And when it was time for me to not do what I was doing at the time, it was pretty easy because I was 28 years old and I didn't have a mortgage, and my father had passed away while I was out here, and so my student loans got forgiven or paid off because of the settlement with his passing. And so I didn't have any debt, which is a a great place to be, but a dangerous place to be. So at 28 years of age, I decided, you know, I really enjoy my job at Drake, but it's time for me to do something else. And so I just quit. I walked in one day and said, I'm giving you a year's notice that I'm leaving, because you can do that in higher ed. You can't do that in the private sector, but you can do it in higher education. I said, I'm leaving. And my boss said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I just know that this I've outgrown this, and it's time for me to go, and this will give me time to figure it out. And then it's sure enough that you've heard that expression, if you jump, the net appears. Well, what happened was I met somebody, and all in a period of 3 weeks, fell in love with this person, started a business with the person, and moved up my departure date by a couple months, because by then I was a couple months into my notice. And I owned a business with this person for what would end up being 25 years, which had kept me here in Des Moines. And I loved it until I didn't. And just like what had happened when I was at Drake, there came a point when I felt like I've got an itch and it needs to get scratched, and I don't know what to do. And the last time I jumped, the net appeared. I guess this time it'll work too. So I told my partner that I wanted out, and that was in 2009, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And by that point, now, the hard part is I wasn't 28, I was 53. And the thing that happens to take your courage away as we get older is the trappings of success and getting older. Now, fortunately, I had paid my house off, and so that part wasn't it, but I still had, I had 2 cars and 2-car payments and insurance for that, and I had a certain standard of living that I was used to, and a certain amount of traveling that I used to like to do, and certain other things. And that, for a long time, that kept me feeling stuck. It kept me feeling like, how am I going to do anything else that pays as well as owning this advertising agency? How is this going to work? But what happened was, I realized that I was miserable. I realized it was taking a toll on my health. I ended up with a chronic sinus infection that lasted an entire year. I had a bunch of other things that were slowly, and I was drinking too much. I'm the girl that had the conversation that said, maybe you're drinking a little too much, because that was my salve, that was my escape, that was how I handled it at the end of the day. I didn't want to be there anymore. And eventually I left. And I didn't have a thing to do, but I had gotten my certification from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I decided I was going to be a health coach. And here's the thing, people believed me, and I had a practice, and it was great. But here's what happened. I spent my days coaching mostly one-on-one with people who would come to me and need some help with resolving their food issues. A lot of times it was weight, a lot of times it was managing chronic illness, trying to manage diabetes without taking medications, all those kinds of things. And I felt like I was a little bit in Groundhog's Day. I was having the same conversations every day, giving the same advice over and over and over. And here's what I realized. I realized that if I said to you some advice, you need to drink more water, you need to exercise a little bit more, you probably need to eat more vegetables, eat organic, you'll feel better. I can tell you all of those things, and you already know them. You already had that information for free. You just turn on network TV for 1 hour one day and you've heard it all. What the issues were, the reason that people were eating unhealthy food and the reason that their lives weren't in a place where they could be optimal was because of these other things we've been talking about. Because their relationships weren't in check, because their jobs, their bosses were taking advantage of them, because of a bunch of other things in their lives that made them turn to alcohol, bad food choices, skipping exercise, and doing those other things. Because that's what ended up undermining their health. So that's when I made the switch from being a nutrition coach to being a healthy living, a midlife courage coach, because I deal with life issues, because those are the things that really end up being at the bottom of everything. Those are the reasons that we make the decisions that we do. And those are the things that really, really matter at the end of the day. So I'm going to ask you to do one more exercise, and then I'm going to take questions. If you open up to page 3 and look on day 1. Okay. And day one is you're going to write 100 successes, and you don't have to write 100 successes tonight. I'm going to ask you to just reach down and see if you can come up with 5. So for the benefit of the people who are watching the video, starting today and continuing for the next 13 days, make a list of 100 successes you've had in your life. Start now and circle back and add more each day as you think of them. Make sure you include the things you now take for granted, perhaps like learning to drive or passing algebra. Maybe you've learned how to type or swim, play an instrument, or make a cake from scratch. Have you learned a second language, raised a child, been published, defeated an addiction? Don't discount the magnitude of this exercise, and don't quit till you reach 100. Well, not today. You can just do 5. But over the course of the next 2 weeks, while you're doing this, I want you to circle back and write down your accomplishments. So I'm quite serious. I really want you to do this. There's a reason that this is important, so have at it. 5 successes. How many do you have? Show me fingers. Okay, good. So what I'm going to do, and don't worry about it if you haven't finished, because what I'm going to do is I'd like to share, and remember, it ain't bragging if it's true. And so I'm sure if you wrote it as a success, it's true. And what you're going to do is inspire other people, because I will also tell you this, coming up with the first group of them is not too hard, but when you have to dig down and get 100, it gets harder, and you forget what you've been successful at. And there's a reason I wanted us to do this. So Tim, can I embarrass you and have you tell us 5 successes?
Sure. I raised 4 children successfully, I believe. I received a master's degree. Became an All-American in a sport called lacrosse. I played on a national championship team. And this past weekend, was inducted into an athletic hall of fame on the East Coast.
Whoa, excellent.
I was a jock.
You totally, I love it, I love it. Hopefully that has inspired somebody else.
Okay, helped people get jobs for 25 years, raised 2 great men, owned a care center for my parents, have grown great gardens, and number 5 is learn how to cook from the gardens.
Beautiful.
Guys gave me some ideas.
Exactly.
So I put down marriage and kids and my grandkids, and ran a marathon, passing tests, career, my home, buying a condo at the Ozarks. So yeah, I'm going on.
Excellent.
I received 2 wine certifications, made top sales consultant 6 months in a row, helped a friend through a tough time, successfully raised an 18-year-old cat, and survived cancer.
Beautiful.
Put down graduated high school, got married, became a firefighter, paramedic, remain active in church. I think that's a big success, and 3 kids, raising 3 kids.
Nice.
I put becoming a wife, a mother, finishing my nursing degree, running races, and joining the choir at church.
I am a diabetic, so I have not taken any meds for 9 months now. I've changed my diet around, and it's completely changed everything for me.
Awesome.
And I've retired, which is great. made it out of high school. I don't know how, but I did. And I also graduated from ILEA, Law Enforcement Academy.
Excellent.
I've raised two great kids. I'm learning to take care of myself. I'm learning to be financially independent. I have good friends, and I'm good friends to them. Take care of my mother. And cooking. I'm good at cooking.
Excellent. So you can see when you hear other people's, it gives you idea. You're like, oh yeah, I did something like that too. Oh yeah, okay. So the reason I wanted you to get started on that exercise is I want you to finish it. And I want you to feel inspired of some of the things that you've done. You're going to come up with a big one where you're going to go like, oh my God, how did I not come up with that? Because it's become second nature. Because you did it, and now you know you can do it. And just like going off the end of the diving board, I'm still not really adept at diving off of a high dive, and I really don't have a need to do that anymore. But I know I can do it. I know I could go out to the end, and I wouldn't need my dad standing behind me, and I could just go off the end and be done with it. So what I'm going to ask you to do when you're doing this exercise, and just do anyway, is dig deep and find the courage to make the changes that you know need to be made. They might be big changes. They might be little tweaks. They could be little things like, do you really need that chocolate before bed every night? Or that whatever that little thing is, you know? Whatever that little thing is that came into your mind as I'm speaking, and I can almost guarantee, and I won't embarrass you and ask you to tell what it is, but everybody here has something that you can up-level, that you can upgrade, that will change your life because you're going to keep adding to it, because you have the courage. I'm going to hit the stop button and ask what questions you might have for me tonight. Or observations. Is there anything that this brought up for you? We're a little group, so whatever you want to talk about, I'm here for.
Do you coach people in your house or their house?
So I have, so as a midlife courage coach, I have clients all over. So I've got, my farthest one away is Australia, so I do her by Skype. But for the most part, it's I do most of my work by phone. And when I've done nutrition coaching, that's often been in person and in my house. But yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Sheree, what do you find a few things that everybody that you run into is struggling with today in our world?
Overwhelm. Everything is coming at us so fast. It's like we want things instantly. I had a friend that texted me, and I was doing something, and so she's like repeatedly texting me, then Facebook message, did you see this? Did you see this? And I'm like, yes, I just chill for a minute, please. So I would say that would be one big thing. And then the other thing is there's competing information and competing messaging. What's the best diet? Have you ever been asked that question? Oh, good heavens. If we look and find what the common denominators is of all of the advice that we're given, that's, to me, where that's the center lane. That's where we need to be shooting. They all agree no processed food. Okay, let's agree, no processed food. But then we get the demands of those roles that we have. Oh, mom needs something, and I got to go over there and help her with that. Or the kids need this, or this is at work, and I know I shouldn't be, but do the drive-through. And I get it. I totally get it. I'm not saying I'm immune to it. I'm on television. I was on TV this morning on KCWI. I do a segment every Thursday. And I talked about, I confessed on TV, the best practices that I have let go. And I used to do yoga 6 days a week, go into the studio for 5, and then practice 1 day at home religiously for years. And then I started traveling. You can hear this, right? Everybody can relate. You've done it. I started traveling, got busy at work, and then I hurt my back, and then you never get back on it. You're like, you had this great habit, and then it got chipped away because of really good, valid reasons. I'm not making crap up. This really happened. But then trying to get back on it is the hard part, because what happens is that you try to make yourself believe that, oh, that fly is in my bottle. Ooh. that's nasty. I'm not drinking that. Oh, I can't unsee that. So then what happens is that you think that you can go back at the same standard that you were at when you left. Well, a few months has gone by. No, it's not going to be the same. Then you beat yourself up and you feel like a failure. Then you add on to that, oh, I'm never going to get back into this. I might as well quit. It's that spiral. It's like, it looks like when water goes down a bathtub drain, and we all do it. It's so predictable, and you think, I'm smarter than that, I'm better than that, I know better. I do it. And this is what I do for a living. But the key is catching yourself. The key is being able to do things like this. You guys are seekers. You don't have to be here. You could have been doing a whole bunch of other things like all these other people are doing. But you want better, you want more. You're not afraid to show up and to claim it. So I'm here to encourage you to do that and to tell you that that is the way out. That is the way toward staying off the medication. That is the way toward raising good kids and grandkids. It's the way to having a successful life that when you look back, you've got the fewest number of regrets. And nobody's going to have no regrets. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? But we can manage the number that we have by having the courage to do the things that we know we need to do. And they don't have to be hard things. They don't have to be ridiculous. On TV today, I talked about all of the things that I have let go, and but in and of themselves, they're little things. Well, okay, as an example, when you don't do yoga, you don't think about eating pizza the night before yoga class but when you know you're going to go and be on the yoga mat the next day, that's not a good feeling. To be doing all those contortions knowing there's going to be like this big belly bomb going on and a person on the mat next to you. So it's easier now for me to eat better. So change one thing changes everything. Just like with those roles, change one thing in one of your roles, it has a ripple effect. Don't discount anything that you do. It's all important. Anything else? I appreciate you very much. Please take as many videos as you want. And I hope that you will do the journal, that you will take it seriously. And it's like I said, it's very fast. If nothing else, do your accomplishments. It'll make you feel awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.